Hey there, Dan Brisebois here with the Farmer Spreadsheet Academy. I just finished a series of webinars promoting my new spreadsheet course called Master Your Farming Spreadsheets, and I thought you might like to see the three cornerstones of an effective spreadsheet system that I shared in that webinar. So we're jumping into the action, so there's a little bit you're missing beforehand, but I think that you'll be able to follow along just where you're at. So come on in. I'm going to now present three cornerstones of what I think, well, the three cornerstones of an effective spreadsheet system. So the first one is you only want to enter data once. In this previous system, we would enter data in the worksheets, and then the same data we'd enter into a planting calendar. And then there'd be a variant of that data that we'd enter into a greenhouse schedule. And then another data set of that data somewhere else. And so all that entering takes time and creates errors. So you only want to enter data once. So in this example that we're going to look at, we're going to enter the harvest needs into a master worksheet. And that's where we're going to enter some of the data once. The second cornerstone is we want to always be referring to things we've already entered. And that's how we avoid entering it multiple times. There are many ways to do that. In this example, I'm going to use a formula called SUMIFS. So it's SUMIF with an S. It's possible that if you've been doing spreadsheets for a while, you already know the SUMIF formula. This is a more recent version of it. And what it lets you do is you add up certain things based on if they match certain criteria. And it'll be quite clear when we get into the spreadsheet, but I just want to explain what I'm going to do before I actually do it. There are other formulas that let you refer to things too, but SUMIFS is the one that we're going to use tonight. And the third cornerstone is we don't look at our data. You know, there's worksheets that are full of all kinds of information and all the math. That's good to create the information, but that's not what you look at when it's time to plant. And that's not what you share with your staff. You got to create reports that have only the information you need to be looking at. And that's what you share with people. And so in this example we had before, the planting calendar was a report. So it doesn't have all the details in the world. Those are all in the worksheets. We just have what we need, you know, a date, how much we need to plant. And so those three cornerstones are the foundations of an effective spreadsheet system. So let's go back to that spreadsheet. All right, I'm going to do another screen share. And we're back to the spreadsheet. Now, we're going to go to that lettuce. So we're going to start off with the planting schedule. And we'll just be clear again. So here you can see number 30 is manually written in. What we ultimately want to do is I'm going to highlight this cell. This is what we're going to be looking at. We want to find a way to bring in the information from the lettuce worksheet into that cell. So the way we'll do that is we're going to add another column. I'm just going to close those. Another column to the left here. And we're going to call that column crop. And then we're going to write in the crop that each row corresponds to. So it's lettuce all the way down. And so each of these is lettuce. And we can actually delete a couple rows on the top. And I just want to show something. Over here, we had a number of merged fields to kind of explain what some of the stuff was. And as I've deleted it, some of the things disappeared. That is something that I've learned to hate with time, is merged fields. Now, for this example, we don't need these headers, so I'm not going to fill them in. What we really need is to know what crop we're going to grow. In this case, lettuce, for the example, the field date we're planting on, and the actual amount that we're planting each week. So this is the actual bed feet that we're planting each week. Let's go back to that planting schedule. And we have 30. And so we're going to do the magic of equals SUMIF with an S, open parentheses. We're going to go back to the lettuce worksheet, and we're starting by highlighting the column, so column L, which has the bed feet that we want to add up. Sorry, I just, okay. Let me start that over. equals SUMIF with an S, open parentheses, and then we're going to highlight the column, and then I'm going to push comma, and then I'm going to highlight the first column of criteria that I'm looking for. So I'm looking for the crop. Then I go back in the planting schedule, and I'm going to choose this cell here. So I'm looking, you know what, I'm just going to start one more time. I made a mistake. So equals SUMIF with an S, open parentheses, highlight the column that we're going to, comma, highlight the column that we're looking at, comma. Very important to put commas between things. That was my mistake. And then I'm going to highlight the cell that we're looking at. And then I can put a comma and then look at the different field dates, comma, and then looking at over here, the field date in question, May 4th, close parentheses, enter, and it shows up 30. And so this is linked to that lettuce worksheet. So if we go back to the lettuce worksheet and this row here, the May 4 date, if we change this to, let's say we're going to grow 75 or 65 feet instead. Over here on the planting schedule, it's now 65. So we have created something dynamic that will update whenever we do the worksheets. Now, I can drag this formula over and I see a bunch of zeros pop up. So this formula, there's a problem with it, is that it's not anchored. When you move things, the references move with them. So we're going to go back into the cell, and I'm going to push F4 to anchor the little dollar signs means that you're locking it into position. I'm going to push F4 to anchor the A's. For the lettuce, this column here, I'm anchoring the column, but I'm going to let the row. So I push F4 once, second time, so a third time. So the dollar sign before the A means the column is anchored, but not the row. Here I'm going to anchor the E's, and then here I'm going to anchor. Did I just made that disappear? I'm going to anchor the row. And now, hopefully, when I drag it over, yeah. So as I drag that over, all the references are anchored, and it's showing up the information that I want to see. Now, if I can drag this down here, carrots are not popping up. And there's a simple reason for that, is that the carrots are not on the lettuce worksheet. They're on the carrot worksheet. So let's bring them into the other worksheet. So I will copy all this data here, all the carrot sheet data, and I'll put it down here. I'm going to just highlight these columns to make it easy for us to see what we're looking at later. And I'm going to add the word carrots here and fill that out. Now let's see what happens over here. The planting schedule is now up to date. And I can continue to work here. So let's say I want to do beets. And I'm not going to do this math. Let's say I'm going to plant these beets also on the 4th of May. So 5, 4. And I'm going to grow 200 feet. And then over here, I want to also do some mustards. And I'm going to grow them let me just get that formatting over here. The 4th of May. And I'm going to do another 200 feet over here. And maybe I'm going to grow some fennel. Looking fantastic. And I got the 4th of May over here and 200. Now, when I come back here, none of those appear. But if I copy these words over and I paste them there, they pop up in the May 4th. So this is a much more dynamic sheet than the previous one is. And instead of having 5 different worksheets, one for each crop, you just have one worksheet with all the crops integrated. Now, there is one thing that I want to highlight is, let's say beets was actually written with you wrote it singular here without an S. That number disappears. There's a little something we can do to go around that. So let's say over here, I'm going to right click, choose data validation. I'm going to choose a list from a range, click on this to click the list, select the range I'm looking at, and highlight these here, and push OK, reject input, and save. And now this adds a little triangle here. And if I click on that triangle, it shows me the stuff I can choose. So if I choose beet over here, this is now fixed. And so if I also add another crop, let's say we're going to grow some celery, over here in the drop-down menu, it shows up. So that's one of the challenges with making references is you have to, there's different tricks to make sure that stuff shows up the right way. And so this planting schedule has suddenly gotten a lot easier to work with than the previous one. And you can update some stuff in your worksheet and it's going to show up here, and you don't have to be working back and forth. You just got to work in one place and you have a report. Now is when I'm going to wave my magic wand, and I am going to bring a little bit of magic into the spreadsheet. In the upper left corner, I'm clicking on it to highlight everything. I'm choosing data in the menu, and I'm going down to pivot table in the drop-down menu, and I'm going to create a pivot table. This shows a pivot table. I'm going to define the rows. I choose a crop, and that shows all the crops that we've been looking at. I'm going to define a column, and the column is going to be the actual field dates that we're working with. And let's just make this a bit skinnier so you can see they're popping up, all the field dates that we're working with. And then the values that we want to see show up, that's not what we want to see. We want to see the actual per planting. And there's a bunch of things show up. There's a bunch of ones, and it's because it's a count. It's counting the number of items, not adding them up. So we'll just change that to a sum, and a bunch of things show up. There's a funny numbers in column B, but that's because it's looking at a blank sheet here. So I can go to the filter. I'm going to choose the actual field date, and I do not want to see blanks. So this shrinks down. I'm going to close the wizard. Oh, actually, it doesn't like that I closed it that way. I'm going to highlight these items here, and I can go all the way to the end, and I can choose, just make a grid, and I now have a planting calendar. This is pretty much the same planting calendar as we have over here, but it only took me a few clicks to get to that point. And so that is the magic of a pivot table. And that's a fantastic report when you can just do a few clicks and get the results that you need to see. Now, there are certain cases where you really want to create a custom report that has a lot of SUMIFS and other functions in it. But in some cases, the pivot table gets you where you want to go to. And those were 3 cornerstones of an effective spreadsheet system. If you do want to sign up for Master Your Farming Spreadsheets, you can go to farmerspreadsheetacademy.com and sign up there. So, have a great week and happy farming.